Thank you very much for taking time out of your day or your evening to join us. As Chris mentioned, I've recently taken over as head of the practice group of the Employment Law Group for Mackrell International. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for us just to meet, to put some names to faces, and to hopefully try and get to know each other a little bit better. I do talk quite fast, so I'm going to try and slow down so that you understand my lovely Scottish dulcet tones. So a little bit about me. I head up the employment law team here at BTO Solicitors. Our firm is a full service commercial law firm. I've been practicing in employment law now for 20 years, 9 of which have been at BTO Solicitors. I head up the team along with 2 other partners. So there's 3 partners in our team and 6 other lawyers, and they're all of varying levels of expertise and seniority. So we're a team of 9, and amongst us we've got well in excess of about 130 years of employment law experience. So what that really means is that most of us within the team have spent our whole careers specialising in employment law. A couple of us within the team, 3 of us, have got accredited specialism in employment law. And in terms of the type of work we do, we act for employers and employees. So we do both sides of the fence in terms of employment work. We undertake contentious work, so we are in courts and tribunals, and we also do the non-contentious corporate support advisory work. We operate in a lot of different sectors: manufacturing, education, charity, medical, sport, and we're highly ranked on the legal directories here in the UK. So whilst we're based in Scotland, we can undertake employment law advice and services across the whole of the UK. So that's not always immediately obvious to our international colleagues. So just bear that in mind going forward. If you have any clients who are looking for employment law support in the UK, it's certainly something that we can assist with. So that's a bit about me. A bit about Lizzie, our guest speaker today. So Lizzie is a fantastic employment law consultant. She's also a former colleague of mine. Lizzie and I worked when she was in private practice before she went off to become an in-house lawyer. She's worked with in-house legal teams and continued to work with in-house legal teams across multiple jurisdictions globally and for European corporations as well. She is someone that we know and trust very well here at BTO, and we work a lot with Lizzie. And it would be great just to get a perspective from an in-house lawyer on the issue that Lizzie's about to address us on, which is the intergenerational working. So what are the challenges that come with intergenerational working? What are potential solutions, and how we see that in our own practices and also for our employer clients. So Lizzie is very knowledgeable in this subject, and so without further ado, I'll pass over to Lizzie and let Lizzie take the floor, and hopefully we'll gain a lot from what Lizzie's got to say.
Great, thank you so much, Laura, and nice to meet you all. A fellow Scottish accent, so I will go equally slow. So yes, I will bring up some slides in a moment, but just to give you a little bit more context, as Laura said, I am a fellow employment lawyer, and I qualified back in 2009. I very quickly got into the world of in-house. So I was with Diageo, the global drinks company, heading up the European employment team, then went to Condé Nast to head up the global employment team in the compliance and risk areas. and currently with consultancy support, Nokia, ABB and Aggregate Industries, but work for a range of portfolio corporate or SME clients on their employment law and people needs. And the reason I say that is quite a lot of the work is going into the whistleblowing investigations and grievances. And what Laura and I often discuss is how much in-house lawyers can benefit from having fantastic relationships with private practice law firms. We really do see it as an extension of our own teams. And if you can gain that type of relationship, it stands you in such good stead. But actually, more and more, we are such a useful commodity to you in private practice because we effectively are the client and see what the client is doing. And so we thought it would be useful to talk on a subject that permeates your world and our world as in-house lawyers, but also for your own talent. And a lot of employment lawyers end up being mentors and or team leaders. And this is just a kind of great immersion in detail of a very topical modern workforce issue just now. So I'm just going to share my screen and we're going to do some slides and let's get into it. It's about half an hour, so there'll be plenty of time at the end for questions. Now, just bear with me. I just have to connect my other cable. Should have done this to start with. 1 second. There we are. Right. Hopefully you can see the slides okay. So this is me. We've been through quite a lot of that detail in terms of my employment. Oh, sorry.
I can't see the slides. Can everyone else see them?
Yeah, I can see them okay.
All right.
Oh,
I can
just
see
Laura.
that.
Some of you can, some of you can't. Hang on. Let me try. Let's try a different way. Let's see.
Lizzie, don't. If it's only me, it's fine. I've
Seen them.
I've had the privilege of seeing your slides before, so if it's only me, please just press on.
Don't worry. Don't worry. If there's a few though, just give me 2 seconds. This is a typical situation of speakers and being consultancy with no IT support. Let's try it this way, Laura. See it now, Laura?
No, but honestly, it's fine. I think I am the only one that's affected. So
Okay. But if anyone else doesn't see them, let us know on the chat and we can easily send them on to you after. A little bit about the agenda. We're going to just go over some of the skills profiling of a multi-generational workforce. So from certainly my perspective, and bearing in mind this is a personal viewpoint of a UK-based professional who sees this type of workforce issues on a daily basis. Some of the language you may feel is stereotyping. You can have your own opinion on that. That's part of the debate on this topic. But I think it's really useful to understand the demographic of a multi-generational workforce. And then we're just going to think about how it's showing up in employment law and employment lawyers' day-to-day caseload, with a little bit about creative solutions of some ideas that you could be giving to your clients in response to some of these topics. And then I just wanted to end with a little bit of insight into how it's permeating in an in-house lawyer's kind of world. And I've certainly come across some different terminology that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are the 14-year-olds behind them, are using in day-to-day language that certainly confuse me. So I'm going to make sure you're all set up for success going forward. So I've split the current workforce into 5 generations. You've got Gen Z there, who are currently your kind of 25 to 29-year-olds, but up the back of that is coming Gen Alpha. Some of you may have children in that category, and that at the end of the day is the future workforce. You can all read for yourself some of my comments here, and forgive me if they're not completely globally contextualized, but these are either social movements, change, or technology developments that each of these generations has experienced. I think particularly prevalent is what people have had to go through in order to be in work or to continue in work, and some of the social movements that have disrupted the way of work. So you can see the Generation X, and this is the evolution of the personal computer, of course, but this generation didn't always start out with such useful technology at their fingertips. So the strong work ethic, the kind of skepticism around digital automation sometimes, not always, not stereotyping, sometimes comes through that particular profile. The Millennials have had a different set of social issues, the 9/11 attacks. There's been a lot of social movements, the Me Too movement, Generation Me, and what you find is that they are really excited about new ways of learning opportunities, because this was the start of enough experience of the old way of work, but not too long in work that they were able to kind of adapt to technology support. These people also have a real kind of social dynamic, because they have kind of, I've put there, constant connectivity, but there's a legacy of socializing runs through kind of schools and colleges and unis and work, and these ecosystems of remaining connected harks back to what they saw parents and grandparents doing, which was writing letters and getting together in person. What you notice with Gen Z, and some of you may have these profiles in your workplace, is these guys, you know, qualified, sometimes graduated in serious university places remotely. They had to go through the COVID pandemic at a very young and vulnerable stage and age of their careers. And one of the problems is incredibly in tune with digital connectivity and opportunity, but reluctance on the communication techniques. There hasn't been the opportunity to re-engage face-to-face in as many times as Millennials, Gen X and Boomers have had. And of course, they don't know a way of learning without technology supporting, because everything can be done. If you look at AI tools, almost everything in your daily work diary could be done more efficiently if you use some of those tools. And I don't mean as a lawyer, because I know there's a lot of ethical and legal issues around that and clients' data, but I mean to prioritize your daily to-do list and to think about some research points and, even to think, what am I cooking for my children's tea tonight? So these people don't understand, I suppose, a world where you wouldn't adapt all that and make yourself more efficient. So what you're finding is that the skills workforce is really leveling out. More and more of your profiles coming through your candidacy for jobs have the same ability on paper, on skills. And what you're looking for is personality traits on assessments. Who's going to fit in? Who could make us think more diverse? What different attributes can they bring that we're not already got? Do they match our consumer base better? And that's really pivoted in the legal sector, in the legal profession in particular, with this evolution of we now have traditionalists and Gen Zs all working in the same environment. And how do you get the most out of that opportunity? What I talk about is kind of that we're in industrial revolution number 4 just now, and I don't need to preach to a very intelligent population about what's been evolving in the data analytics and advanced engineering stakes. So whether it's robotics or automation or virtual glasses or whatever it is you've seen in the latest digital glossy brochure, it's happening, and that's what the latest talent coming in, the newest workforce, is getting very excited by. And you can see over the period of industrial revolutions, just the great strides taken each time. And probably people thought when computer and internet came in that surely was about it, apart from sending rockets, to Mars. But no, now we're really pivoting into efficiency that we couldn't even contemplate before. I notice it with the legal profession in particular, the real kind of stalling sometimes of wanting to adapt to that change. And I can see why, because it's all kind of, some of the large language learning models, are based on the trained data that's within the system and not on kind of authored research and or, quoted proper text. So, what are you actually using when it comes to taking that data and putting it into client reports? But this in itself is a topic to think about, where, is that inspiring, however, for those in the team around you who think that the same topic or the same project or the same subject could be done with a bit more finesse, just getting a little bit of help from, some of the automated solutions that are with us. And that just is a slide that splits out some of the evolution of this technology that we see within ourselves. And I really think that that's the crux, therefore, technology revolution is the crux as to why we have these 5 different workforces. Yes, there's been the social movements. Yes, there's been the life experience. Yes, there's been health matters. But actually, what's the common theme through those 5 generational blocks that I shared with you previously? And it is this evolution. And so what do we do about that? And you'll have your own views. I'm sure Laura would love to hear where successfully you have managed to integrate the generations together regards the ecosystem of a law firm. But personally, from Berry, from my company, we promote the solution of mentoring. So we really promote the safe space to share, connect, reverse mentor it, be very vulnerable as the leader, the line manager, the strategy setter, and really open to an alternative idea that could help your vision come to life. Not be so secretive with who gets to know what within an organisation. We'll get on to this, but more and more transparency is required to engage and to ensure the trust of the talent that you have within your firm. They want to know why they're not getting that bonus this year. They want to know why they're paid differently from their peer. They want to know why your strategy is going in one direction when it feels like the work they're doing day to day is something else. And a little bit of, that vulnerability, that opening up, and creating through mentoring really the safe community space where really opinions are allowed and contribution matters. When you do it in a mentoring setup, you see, you're not actually in the real life workplace in a client scenario. You're not working on a case file. You're not wasting time by having to deflect people's opinion. People get to rehearse how it sounds coming out their mouths, and people get to rehearse how it feels to absorb that different perspective. And that itself is called cultural intelligence and emotional intelligence. And cultural intelligence and emotional intelligence are what you should be asking, in my opinion, every interview candidate coming through your desk. Where have you practiced this? How good are you at it? What do you profess to have in terms of these skills? Because that is what makes the difference between different talent and those that have what I say is a very similar benchmark of skills. So how do you appreciate that difference, that diversity of thought and knowledge, and really use it to your advantage? This is a slide that really brings it back to employment lawyers, I suppose, and we think about how intergenerational issues are permeating in the cases that we get, whether that is a cultural kind of lobby from an employee representative forum, whether it's actually a ballot from a union, it could be a grievance or a whistleblowing matter. Actually, what I'm seeing more is toxic, splitting of partnerships and or executive leadership teams on some of these issues. So I think the use of language, the way that things are described, the ability to communicate is different in the different generations. I've just explained that Gen Z have been taught through universities and college forums to sit behind Teams instant messaging, to ask questions in real time, but not to a face. These people are preferring hybrid working, although we're trying to get a lot of people back into workplaces. That's met with a lot of resistance because people of the Gen Z category really do rate the profile of their health and the work-life balance. And it doesn't matter what you say about how important that is to your firm. They will really prefer that in terms of ranking of importance to them. The communication style of a boomer or a millennial can be way more prompt and to the point. That's because they're the strong work ethic is coming through. They're incredibly driven to get done what is needed to be done for that client. That's the only way that they have known how to work, and it's a really smart way of working. But when these two styles of like, but I need to understand why we're going in this direction, and this style of, you know what, just do it. When these two start clashing, that's when we're starting to see cases, and the intergenerational conflict becomes kind of the pivotal reason for it. We're also getting quite a lot of age discrimination complaints. So either the older category of workers saying that they're being left out of training or, exciting project management or change management opportunity because they're just not seen to be people that would adapt to those skills. And on the other side, we see a bit of the newer population, and it's not always the younger, but it's when you enter into the workforce. But we're seeing real stereotyping of Gen Z's abilities, that kind of works to rule, always leaving at 5. Can they really be trusted? Are they literally here for a few years? Are they just passing through? And when that treatment isn't explained, or when that method of communicating isn't described, the view of it must be to do with my age comes about. And many of you in this call will appreciate the language of spurious discrimination complaints. Sadly, a lot of our job is working out the prospects of whether something has merit or not. A lot of these do not have merit about them being to do with age, but that is how it is profiling and making employment lawyers busy with age discrimination complaints. I don't think is a great use of time for anybody. So kind of flipping over to the positives, however, how is this, I suppose, permeating into the workplace, and how is it creating more opportunities? I've described the mentoring approach, that really is one of these learning and development opportunities. you have to bring these generations, spokespeople for each of the different groups. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If people want to nominate and volunteer themselves into those categories, then start getting them to speak together as a cohesive, collaborative unit. The more that people can take time out to be shown what innovation is and is available, the more they're likely to adapt to the use of it. So the way that boomers and millennials and Gen X actually digest information is in learning style modules, you know, taking time out the desk into the boardroom and watching the presentation. The way that Gen Z digest is in learning bite-sized chunks of language. You know, I'm talking 2 sentences. So these are completely different ways of absorbing. And if you're trying to promote in your firm an innovative you know, new tool or a legal operations device or a new case matter management tracker system, be aware when you're deploying it. You can't deploy that in the same way to every single employee in your firm. They're going to absorb it and they're going to adapt it in very different styles. But that kind of innovation of thought, innovation of learning and development opportunity is something that's come about as a result of this. People are having to stop and think, yes, it takes a little bit longer and it can be a pain if you're the leader and just want the tool out there. But if you want it out there successfully, think about doing it with a bit more acknowledgement of what it actually means for each of the populations. I just wanted to bring this up because this is how I see it manifesting in the cases on my particular desk. And bear in mind, I'm kind of in-house for global jurisdictions. So hopefully some of this you do see yourselves. But I don't know about you, back in 2009, I didn't hear of the word microaggression, gaslighting, or tokenism, but here we are, and this is what people describe their treatment as. It's all still under the kind of dignity at work and code of business conducts and zero tolerance. But if I just describe microaggression as a term used for commonplace verbal, behavioural, or environmental slights, whether intentional or unintentional, but they communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes. So these are slights. Bear that in mind. They're kind of commonplace behaviours. It's things that people in the past didn't get picked up on, but no longer will the current workforce stand for that. They will not be treated in a way that makes them feel that they've been made to feel hostile, you know, that their view on something is being discarded. They won't be spoken to in a derogatory manner. They're due more respect than that. I find that quite fascinating because the intentional, unintentional, as we know, isn't really a factor when it comes to most of the discrimination, bullying, harassment traits. But this is actually something that's quite hard to pinpoint. So when you're an investigator like me on quite a lot of whistleblowing lines, to actually say that this has happened or not, you know, can be a bit of work. Gaslighting is the practice of psychologically manipulating someone into questioning their own sanity, memory, or powers of reasoning. You hear that expression a lot if you're on TikTok. Not that I'm on TikTok, but I've been gaslit. You know, this is profiling in friends and social demographics, you know, in children's schools, in kind of community places. To feel gaslit is to really question somebody's, you know, actually philosophical beliefs, religion, their political viewpoints, the way that they have expressed what they've heard on the news. It's just like, that's a little nonsense. You're not reading it right. Like, oh, you know, that is gaslighting. And tokenism is the practice of making only a symbolic effort to do a particular thing. So especially see this with recruiting a small number of people from underrepresented groups in order to give the appearance of a diverse workforce. So you might hear about this from corporate clients who want to match the workforce with the consumer product and who are buying the consumer products. So they think, well, if we have staff that talk the same, you know, cultural landscape, that wear the same types of clothes, that eat the same types of food, then surely we resonate with the audience that we're trying to market our product to. But once the ideas are in the organization, they're then cast aside in order for the sales team to come in and use it to the best of their ability. I've seen that tokenism word used more and more since we've come back through COVID, and people really questioning, what is my contribution to this team? Contribution now really matters. And it's not that hard, actually, if I go over to solutions, to make people feel like they are contributing. They're not asking to contribute to your board deck. They're not asking to contribute to your decisions of, which department in the law firm is going to get the better cut of the bonus this year per performance. They're just asking to contribute to the culture. They're just wanting to make sure that you know how it feels to work there. And they're not asking you to change everything and improve everything. But if their voice can be heard and a few points taken forward, it's amazing how you'll buy trust and you'll buy that person's loyalty. A lot of people are talking about the passing through. So the tenure of work is becoming shorter. I think, a lot of my work's in London, and it's like people are used to 18 months for in-house lawyers to come in, pass through and go out. And so in that 18 months, they're expecting a promotion and a salary rise. And it's like, well, you've barely been here. Really, how can we justify that? If you're going to take that attitude, however, to them all, well, everybody's going to be in for 18 months. What are you going to do in the 3 stepping stones that they're with you for to show what a unique experience it's been? What have they gained on their CV that they couldn't have gained elsewhere? And it's amazing when you explain that to people, they'll stay for a 4th stepping stone and a 5th, because you've really paved the breadcrumbs to showing them that you are unique, that you can do things differently. So why would you want to leave? And that's quite a powerful technique, we find. Just 2 more slides and then I'm done. But this is just a global perspective of what in-house, and really I'm speaking from as an associate GC in Condé Nast and head of compliance and risk. So these are the types of things that my colleagues in my networks and I are dealing with. I think the renewed ambition for EDIB communities, they feel like they need to, amplify their voice even more just now due to global movements, both in terms of political decisions, but also social perspectives. There's a view that all that work that was done in setting up employee representative groups was it's not achieving the results that were planned for. Was there some of that tokenism where people were put into roles so that the demographics could look better? So if these communities have so many ideas that are genuine and authentic because they've come from the minority that needs represented. So it's a little bit about, don't just let it be a talking shop, actually let them come up with stuff. Let the Gen Zs in that group absolutely fly. And it's amazing what they'll come up with. It's real, tangible, easy to use solutions. We're seeing a heck of a lot on equal pay. I don't know about you guys, but fair value for fair work. So there's European legislation around that, and there's just a lot of questioning around reward principles. And when it used to be that you'd say, well, we have a global reward strategy, there's job evaluations, all the jobs have been benchmarked and salary banded, and I'm afraid, you're here in the band. That used to be it. But now it's like, well, I don't think I should have been in that band in the first place. So what's the next plan? So and this stuff takes a lot of time. And then what's happening is the unionization of businesses, because it's very hard for them to get the answer they want to hear from internally in corporations. So they kind of go to the externals, and the unions have some pretty good attempts just now at getting represented. So I find if I go in my inbox morning, there's at least 2 or 3 saying, oh, that's another letter in from this union, and they've shown up at the door and we've got to pay the fees. And so that's a real eminence of activity. The right to disconnect and whistleblowing lines around treatment at work is the other area. So kind of post-COVID, and then some of the European countries certainly actually put this into law. They kind of like, we will work 40 hours or 45 hours, and do not contact us out with that, both in the evenings and at the weekends. And if you do, that's actually a breach of law. So that's a real step forward. And then when people are either contacted and or even during the course of their work, contacted in a manner that they feel degrades them, belittles them, it's going on the whistleblowing lines. And I find that intriguing. It's like the whistleblowing lines used to be set up for protected disclosures, you know, that had a public interest, a health and safety angle, something that you really want to kind of risk mitigate, get legal privilege on, think about due diligence. But actually more and more people are just phoning them because they don't feel listened to by local HR or local management. So the use of them has exponentially increased. My last slide, and thank you for being with me. Hopefully you left enough time for Laura to chat to you after. This is just the lingo. I find this very amusing, but and maybe you hear this in your day-to-day dealings, or maybe you use the language yourselves, but some of these expressions I have got completely wrong when I'm doing some of them. I do a lot of mentoring with junior lawyers, and this comes up and I think I know what they're talking about and I don't. So mid-performance, if somebody says, you know, my performance is pretty mid, it doesn't mean middle. It means really pretty poor. And there's an example of how confusing this landscape is. What's the tea means what's the gossip. So you often, if you enter, you know, the coffee station or brave yourself up for going to immerse with the rest of the team and what's the tea, that's what it means. What's the gossip going on the floor. Jobless behaviour is, I hear graduates use this all the time and trainees. It means that somebody's being over keen. So it's like, oh, it's such jobless behaviour, when it's like a bit cringe, like, you know, calm down, stop being so keen. Somebody that stands on business is somebody that gets stuff done. You want these people. You should ask your new talent profiles, who's going to stand on business for me. And the last one, slay, is about kind of outfits or the look, or a materialistic kind of view that something looks pretty cool, pretty snazzy. So that's just a little bit of fun at the end, and that's me and my website, where you can find me if you want to hear any more detail on any what I've talked about. And Laura, I think that's all. I'll hand back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lizzie. That was really insightful and thought-provoking. I could certainly, a lot of what you were saying resonates with me, both in terms of our firm internally, but also with some of the issues that my employer clients bring to the table. The whistleblowing thing, for example, we have definitely had a rise in whistleblowing complaints that aren't properly whistleblowing complaints. They don't meet the legal test for whistleblowing. And a lot of those complaints are arising as a consequence of this intergenerational workforce. Certainly for us, we recognise, you know, that Gen Z category of workers who don't want to climb the career ladder. They don't want to be partner. They don't want to be equity partner. They don't want to, you know, they want that work-life balance. And in recognising that, we have introduced a new title within our structure for people who want to climb as far as partner, but be recognised as, you know, that's as far as they want to go. So there's certainly a lot that we're seeing within our firm. Just the training as well. I think that's a very good point about thinking about the different generations when you're rolling out a new IT product. For example, we recently rolled something out, and you know, it sent a lot of people into a complete tiz about having to, you know, change and how do we comply with that. But what we did was the same training for everyone, and that, from what you're saying, is not the way to do it. But to tailor it for the different generations. And my final point is mentoring. So we do have a mentoring scheme within the firm, but what that tends to be is the more experienced senior lawyer mentoring the more junior lawyer, as opposed to it being a kind of two-way stream. So I think there's a bit of education around the more senior lawyers realising that they can learn an awful lot from the Gen Z, you know, the more junior lawyers. And I think we need to just have a look at our mentoring programme and see whether we're really getting the most out of that. So yeah, so a lot of that, I mean, in the UK, this is a hot topic, and it's certainly something that resonates with us and with our clients. I'm interested just to hear from the others on the call whether this is a topic that resonates in your jurisdiction. Is it something that you're seeing employer-client cases as a result of this intergenerational working? Anyone like to? Chad, do you want to let us know about
Yeah,
your
sure.
experience?
So it's definitely a topic of extreme interest in Florida and from our clients throughout the United States. We've had some, the normal type of issues, both within the firm for purposes of management, and also, the legal side for our clients. From the client's perspective, we have issues that have, come up and are well known, like, with the newer generations always, being on their phones and wanting to be in contact. And, our clients are like, great, but then we have our employees who are entitled to overtime if they're on their phones working after hours, and how do you control that? Interesting, the newest issue that I was just in a conversation about. So a lot of times in offer letters, or if it's more formal employment agreements in the United States, it requires the employee to focus their full time and efforts to working as an employee for the company. But the newest discussion I've got is, what does full-time mean these days? Because if you talk to the, say, newest 2 generations, they view the world as the age of the side hustle, right? They could be lawyers if we're talking management, or employees 9 to 5, and they've got 2 other side hustles that they work on till 2 in the morning. So what does it really mean these days to be a full-time employee? And no one really has an answer for that these days.
I think that's interesting, Chad, just because, and you'll see it when I brought up the profile of Gen Z, but that excitement for kind of digital aptitude, but also the ability to be creative. So you'll find, and even in the legal profession, of course, the eminence of consultancy lawyers, or fractional GCs or freelance lawyers, whatever you like to call them. This is how we're retaining, more and more in the profession and in their career choice, because they can do a bit of law and then do a bit of something else on the side and participate more in their kids' PTA and whatever it is they're doing. And that's actually retaining people and retaining the talent, and they're more enthusiastic for their employer that's allowing them to do that type of portfolio lifestyle. And I completely appreciate there's boundaries there for non-competes, etc., and who pays the statutory sick pay if they're off, like, are any of those other employers involved? It can be a minefield. But that kind of upfront, transparent conversation, like, we know you're doing it, just explain to us what you're doing, and I'm sure we can put guardrails around it. It can't just be that the employee just, full on gets to take advantage and live life how they want to. There has to be controls and governance from the employer perspective. But I think you're going to find that more and more that is the trait of the best talent you're going to retain in your workforce, is people that have had those perspectives from other environments, and bringing that diversity of thought back to your employer.
Absolutely. Is there anyone else got any specific examples of where employer clients have reached out to you or within your own firm on these types of issues? Joanna, is there anything in, because you're UK based as well, aren't you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, UK based in London. I'm trying to think. Not in the last few months. I think the only issues we've had are hybrid working arrangements. A lot of thinking it's their right to continue working. And that's a bit of a generational thing, but I can't think of any other examples now.
yeah. I mean, hybrid working is something that I think we're all probably dealing with you know, for our employer clients as well, in particular in terms of whether there's this tension, whether everyone should be back in the office or whether, you know, hybrid is still the model to go the way forward. I mean, that's an issue in terms of retention of staff. I've certainly seen that, you know, when we're interviewing, you know, the Gen Z population, it's very much something they want as hybrid working. They want to have that flexibility around not always having to be in the office 5 days a week. You know, and if you have the rule, no, you must be in the office 5 days a week, you're just, you know, simply not going to attract and retain staff. So I think that certainly, you know, from my perspective, a generational issue.
And I've seen that, Laura, just as another solution on that topic to chuck in here. It's like, why do you want them to be in 5 days a week? So it's the communication back. It's kind of getting down to brass tacks of, I appreciate, you know, that you want to go to spin class at 5 o'clock. So do I, by the way. And I also know I've got this list of clients here. And the reason that I need you in with me is, and it's actually genuine, authentic reasons. You know, you're not being annoying about it. You're not being irritating. You've let them into a little bit of vulnerability, a bit of strategy around how the business, you know, operates week to week. And with a bit of loyalty, then hybrid can be thought about. They've kind of got to earn their stripes. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, like, you know, my team look up to me as a leader, and this would be you, Laura, I know how inspiring you are, but like they look up to you and they really want to be like you. And it's like, well, how do you think I got my stripes? It's from doing the years of 5 or 4 days in the office so I can actually shadow and watch how people do their work. And especially for employment lawyers, the way we come across on phones, on tribunal meets, you know, with clients on incredibly sensitive issues, that's the making of a good lawyer. It's not going to be about if you know discrimination law or are you the hottest on litigation. Everyone's going to have that as the base because of all these efficient tools. It's how you can perform for clients, and how are they going to learn that from not being in the office? So I think feeding that line of, like, I mean, it's a little bit icky because some people don't want to blow smoke, you know, themselves, but I think a little bit of explaining that in their lingo of how it helps them, it helps to nudge that conversation through.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And a point that you made earlier, Lizzie, just about Gen Z's relying very heavily on IT, so emails by way of communication. I've certainly experienced when you're dealing with a negotiation, for example, and you're Gen Z or more junior lawyer, it's firing off emails backwards and forwards, and I'll say, look, why don't you just lift the phone to the lawyer on the other side? You know, you might actually make a bit more progress in terms of trying to, and it's like, I need to speak to someone on a phone, you know. And again, that's something that's fed back to us from our employer clients as well. So I think all of this is, I think it's just the recognition of the different skill set of the different generations and the different way of working, and just working out how we can bring that together for the greater good. So no, is there anyone got any other points that they want to raise?
Laura, can I jump in with a?
Oh.
Sorry.
I think Nazim had her hand up.
Nazim?
Oh, I was just going to kind of talk about a little bit about what the hybrid work schedule and what I've kind of seen is, I think what's interesting is I think when the pandemic started, everyone wanted fully remote work all the time and they never wanted to leave. But what I'm seeing now with, even in our own firm, with the younger attorneys that are coming in and our law students that come in, they want to be in the office at least some of the time. They don't want the hybrid they don't want a fully remote schedule anymore, because I think they spent so much time, just them, that they're seeking out some in-person interaction. But I think one thing that they do still want a hybrid, and I think one thing that has worked for me personally and within our firm is kind of looking for ways to incorporate that hybrid schedule into what the firm needs. So, you know, every single day of the week, I'm not necessarily needing FaceTime, but I will take one day a week and work from home to do my writing, which is an important part of my job, is to be able to pump out some memos, some motions, and whatnot. And so being able to incorporate that one day where I get to stay home and I get to just do writing when I'm not necessarily taking calls and meeting with clients. And so finding that balance of like, okay, what is it that you can do from home that would be beneficial for you to do at home as well?
Yeah, I totally agree, Lizzie, that seems to be the case, certainly within the UK, that there is a move, you know, the majority don't want to work fully remote. But the hybrid model where you need your thinking time, your peace and quiet just to get on with, you know, writing pleadings or preparing a case, you know, works really well. So yeah. Chris, were you going to mention something?
I was going to ask a question, Lizzie, a European perspective and hopefully an American perspective on the same question. It comes from your slide where you had the global perspectives. And one of those you had in the top left corner, you had renewed ambition for DEI and belonging communities. Given what's happening in America, how is a multinational or global who has business in America going to deal with the unraveling of many of the DEI programs in the US? Is it going to be domestic, or are global European companies going to be thinking, I'm going to need to do something in the US about my DEIs? Is it a risk to business? And so the same question to
it's a very topical question, Chris, and a lot of US employment lawyers on this that I'm sure are grappling with the detail. But even just returning to the inbox, I think it was last Monday after that was announced, Chris, we had European employee forums up in arms about this, because it was thought to be the start of the unraveling of their own forums and representation. But it doesn't, you know what it does from the lawyer's perspective is it's completely distracted from actually the agenda that really matters, because now people are worrying about, you know, being heard, and will the groups kind of suddenly vanish, and are we not going to be allowed locus anymore? And certainly I think my clients are some sensible corporates that exist out there, but I've been in many that aren't sensible. You know, that's the last thing you want to be doing is folding your representative groups, because that is the softly spoken, sensible discussion environment that's not over yammer in kind of heated, you know, anonymous posts, and it's not, you know, on social media. It's actually controlled and contained and can be discussed. It's been given a time in the diary, it's been given a meeting room, and even if government federal contracts no longer can, even through the US, whether they can recognise these forums or not, I think what you'll find, Chris, is the informality of how long forums have been around has meant that employers can make change so much better because they have taken principles to these types of informal forums, and they've heard the feedback and they've pivoted slightly or they've adjusted. And when it actually launches into the wider community, which is full of each of these forums, things actually work. So it's amazing how it's distracted from the agenda. I've not dealt with a US instruction, given I'm a UK qualified lawyer. I deal a lot across Europe, but that's certainly the reaction is, oh gosh, are we next? And I think that's quite sad, actually, because that's not why people turn up and meet you every week. It's not to tick the legislative box. It's to have the most kind of culturally aware organisational decisions behind strategies so that things work, you know. So that was just my take.
Any thoughts from the US side on that? Any clients coming to ask about the programs?
It's interesting times over here for sure. I think there's a lot of confusion over what DEI is and what it isn't, and I think there's a lot of DEI has I think the term DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, not to get overly political, but I think the term has been overly politicized. And so, what has gone on here in the States in the last week, we've seen a lot of rhetoric around DEI. We've seen, the rescinding of an executive order that eliminates some affirmative action programs for federal, for companies that have certain size federal contracts with the federal government. We've seen businesses say, we're getting rid of our DEI programs. But I think the point that needs to be made, and I think is being missed here, because I do a lot of reading of what people are saying online with this stuff, is that like discrimination is still illegal. Trump did not get rid of our workplace discrimination laws, and so it's still illegal to fire someone, refuse to hire someone, discipline someone, take an action against someone because of their race, because of their sex, because of their religion, age, disability, national origin, pick your protected class. And that is still illegal, and it's a creature of statute. And unless Congress changes it, it's going to remain illegal. So I think there's been a lot of rhetoric around DEI, and we should be concerned about it. But I think what's being lost is employers still have pretty significant affirmative obligations to follow our equal employment opportunity laws, even though the federal government has said we're getting rid of DEI programs within the federal government, and we're getting rid of affirmative action for federal contractors, and a lot of high profile companies, the Targets and the Home Depots of the country have said we're dismantling our DEI programs. But having said all that, discrimination is still illegal, and I think that's an important point to make.
Yeah, I would agree with John. We're having a more interesting issue in Florida because our governor has, passed some executive orders and laws that basically ban DEI training. So the question is, what is DEI training? Because under the law in the United States, there are certain affirmative defenses to sexual harassment, to discrimination, where you have to have discrimination policies, have to train your employees on them, have complaint procedures. And if you follow all of these steps, you potentially have legal defenses to these type of harassment or employment discrimination claims. So how can you have potentially restrictions on DEI training if those include training about discrimination, where you have federal U.S. Supreme Court decisions that require companies to do that in order to have defenses? So we're having more interesting talks in Florida even than just federally in the United States.
Certainly.
Daniela, down in Venezuela, before we head off, any thoughts from Venezuela?
Well, in Venezuela, we still based on gender issues, or not gender, but in the generational issues. We can see here everybody still like we don't see like a very virtual kind of workspace. I mean, it is very normal that everybody goes to their workspace. Additionally, we can see that some kind of it's not remuneration, but like social benefits that some companies, they're kind of changing in order to fulfill some of their not requirements, but like to benefit the employees. Like for example, it's very normal some insurances that not generally to every generation it is like a proper or ideal benefit, social benefit for the employees. So they're kind of like they're looking some other kind of benefits that they can give employers to employees to kind of like keep like their loyalty or to keep the talent in the companies. So that's some things that have been happening here in Venezuela lately.
Excellent. Well, I think that brings us to the end of today's session. So thank you everyone for joining. We've not had time, unfortunately, to do our quick stop introduction. However, worry not, there is a LinkedIn group for the Employment Law Practice Group. So if you've not already joined that, I would encourage you to join it, and let's just share a bit of info about you, about your experience, about your firm, and we can use that space to try and get to know each other in the group a bit better, so that we're familiar with you, with your firm, so that if and when the opportunity arises for us to collaborate, connect, pass work to each other, then we know exactly who we're dealing with. So have a look on LinkedIn and join in for that group. The other thing to say is, if anyone has any ideas about what we might talk about when we next meet, then please let me know. I'd be delighted to have a chat with you. Chad and I have already had a call. Anyone with any ideas, they would be most gratefully received. This is our space. It's for us to, connect and try and work together. So just let me know. Chris, is there anything else other than me to thank you for your coordinating this, and obviously Lizzie for her very thought-provoking session that she gave to us today. It's really been very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lizzie, from me. I do have one thing. I have a plug. And I've just come off, this is my second call tonight. The last one, this is a second in a back-to-back. The last one was the transportation and logistics call. It was the second of 4 calls. And you're thinking, well, how does this work for employment? Call 3 is to cover transportation and logistics, but it covers the supporting group. And one of those is employment law. And on the call that we just had, Vivian van der Kull, who is within Ted Holton in the Netherlands, is going to be talking about a very big case, an employment law case, which could impact significantly on global shipping and flags of ships. And she's going to get her colleague to come along and talk about that case. And Leonard Fleissig, who's out in Virginia, is going to give an opposite or a supportive talk from his perspective on the potential impact, because apparently the impact is going to be global. And the two of them were saying it could make for a very interesting discussion on the call. So I've got a couple of options. One is I can sort of keep it toned down on the transportation and logistics, and then ask them both to come along for future chat to go through how they see this employment case panning out and the global impact of it. So a couple of options there. But if you want to join that call on the 9th of April, you'll see a flyer coming out for that. So that's the little plug from me for the practice groups. Other than that, all that remains for me to wish you a happy new year, first day of the Lunar New Year here, and a happy and prosperous 2025 and the year ahead. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
See you guys. Bye-bye.